Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some breaking news out of Athens, Georgia, as Kirby Smart has named Carson Beck the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs heading into 2023. And this was a conversation and a national media discussion point that I think was just massively overblown. And at the end of the day, Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton, whoever won that job, it always sounded like it was going to be Carson Beck, is going to be just fine in this Georgia offense. We'll get into the reasons why this Georgia offense is not really going to skip a beat heading into 2023. Now, before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and especially the Georgia fans. We actually just took a deep dive into the Georgia defense this morning. So we got some news to talk about the Georgia offense. Now, it's a team that it's a blast to talk about. I mean, as someone who follows recruiting as close as I do, seeing all these names kind of emerge as starters and seeing them just kind of recycle NFL talent year after year, I have a blast talking. The support you guys have shown the Georgia fans truly does mean a lot. A ton of go dogs in the comment section. So appreciate you guys rocking with the boys like you have. And let's get into Carson Beck. And first, let's talk about why Carson Beck won the job. And then we'll talk about what this Georgia offense is going to look like. Carson Beck, I think, wins the job because of the consistency. I think you saw if you watched the spring game, G-Day, you saw Carson Beck just has the most command of this offense. Now, might Brock Vandagriff have a little bit more athleticism, have a little bit of a stronger arm? Sure, I don't think it's margin like that much better, but he might be. But at the end of the day, Georgia has shown time and time again, we're going to put the quarterback in who kind of operates the offense, limits the mistakes, and does the job that he needs to do. And I think after all the scrimmages, after all the fall practices, Carson Beck's name just kept emerging as stacking solid days. Now, the reason I'm so optimistic about this Georgia quarterback situation that as a Michigan fan, I'm wearing the shirt. Like, you want to try to poke holes into this Georgia team, hoping you can win a national championship, and Georgia's not going to win one. I think a lot of the national media wanted to find like some sort of way you can have question marks about this Georgia team. And at the quarterback, because there's a quarterback battle, they kind of capitalized on that. At the end of the day, a very similar conversation we have with the Ohio State quarterback battle. I mean, there are three guys that a lot of SEC teams and programs around the country would take as their starting quarterback. And so that's kind of, they've been the recipe for Georgia and Kirby Smart year after year is competition breeds success. And you had a competition all spring, all fall camp. We knew Kirby Smart wasn't just going to give Carson Beck the job because he was quarterback 2 last year. He's going to make him earn it, and he did earn it. And so you feel really good about what Georgia is bringing. And with Carson Beck now, what I want to get, have this conversation is Stetson Bennett was awesome. I mean, you're seeing him during the NFL preseason, continue to be just a playmaker, a gamer. Carson Beck probably has a little bit more physical traits to make this Georgia offense even more successful in 2023. But what I'm even more excited about and why this Georgia offense is going to be just fine is you're looking at an offensive line that, and skill position. We'll get to that in a second, but you're looking at an offensive line that you're going to be able to run the football. You're going to be able to pass protect, and Carson Beck's going to have clean pockets. And we've said this time and time again, what Georgia's doing on the offensive line, the guys that they kept out of the NFL draft that are coming back in 2023, this is the best offensive line heading into the 2023 season. Again, as a Michigan fan, I can recognize how good this Georgia offensive line is. Just looking at the interior that you have coming back, Cedric Van Pran, probably the best center in the country. Tate Ratledge, even as he's battling injuries, continues to be one of the best interior offensive linemen. Xavier Truss, you have a Marius Mims, who I'm talking so fast because this team is so loaded. Marius Mims probably going to be a top 15 NFL draft pick. And then you have Ernest Green, who's trending to be an NFL draft pick when he's draft eligible. Your starting five is elite. And then you look at the depth that they have. This Georgia offensive line is going to be really good. And what's a best friend of a new quarterback? Being able to run the football. Now, this might be a kind of a sketchier part of this Georgia team heading into the season the whole running back room seems to be banged up, right? Kendall Milton battling some injuries, Roderick Robinson battling some injuries. Almost all these running backs kind of are seemingly battling some injuries. You're hearing some good things about guys like Andrew Paul. My take on this is, they're going to get healthy, and they're going to get healthy for the games that matter. Let's be frank, beginning of the season, you're not stressing about some of these opponents. So you're going to get these guys healthy. And then at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. There are 4 or 5 starting running backs on other teams that are in this Georgia running back room. I really do think Kendall Milton is one of the most a healthy Kendall Milton is one of the more talented and underappreciated running backs in the country. And then you get to the pass catcher room where, again, you look at spots to pick on Georgia. The national media loves to ask questions about the wide receiver room. and then just kind of forget that Brock Bowers exists. You have, talk about quarterback's best friend, a strong run game, good pass protection, and a tight end that can work the middle of the field. Brock Bowers is a tight end that can work the middle of the field and more. So you have arguably the second best pass catcher in the whole entire country behind Marvin Harrison Jr. at your tight end spot. And then you go out and get a ton of wide receivers that, I mean, are going to step up. Ladd McConkey being the guy that has just emerged as, when the ball hits his hands, he's going to catch it. He's going to work after the catch, and he's going to get open. And having a guy like that, as much as it's fun, and this is not a knock on George Pickens, but as much as it's fun to have a guy like A.D. Mitchell or George Pickens, having a guy like Ladd McConkey who's just on the field, he's going to separate, he's going to get open, he's going to move the chains. It's not as sexy as having that freak wide receiver one, but man, is it more effective. And I think that's a large part of why you've seen this Georgia offense have so much success. It's not a sexy offense by any means, but when you can dominate the line of scrimmage and have guys that just create separation and create after the catch, it's really easy to run this offense. Now, taking a look at some other pass catchers, Dominic Lovett, apparently him and Carson Beck connected with a 40-plus yard pass during the fall camp practice this morning. I think Dominic Lovett's going to be a guy that you're working in the slot. I mean, him and Ladd McConkey, those guys are just guys who create separation. They're quarterback-friendly wide receivers. And again, that's why Carson Beck and why I'm not too concerned about Carson Beck taking over this offense. You have like a loaded talent. Ra Thomas, Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, and then you're hearing some good stories about some of the true freshman wide receivers. At the end of the day, you look at this Georgia offense, starts up front. They control the line of scrimmage. They can dominate in the run game. They can dominate in pass protection. You have a staple of good running backs. You have elite pass catchers around Carson Beck. And now Carson Beck's job gets a lot easier. You're not asking Carson Beck to go out and win a Heisman Trophy. You're asking him to operate within this offense, and this offense is very effective, and he's going to get the job done. And again, we just took a dive into this defense. This defense looks like it's just going to be as good as we've seen in years past. I'll link that if you guys are interested in hearing our Georgia defense talk. And at the end of the day, I mean, this is why Georgia has had so much success year after year. Competition and depth. And you look at some, I mean, the Florida Gators could be an example of, after Graham Mertz, it gets really sketchy in terms of quarterback play. There's a lot of programs that it gets sketchy after quarterback play. For the Georgia Bulldogs, and knock on wood right now that Carson Beck's fine and healthy, but having that competition, having that depth in the quarterback room, it just breeds greatness. And that's what we're seeing with the Georgia Bulldogs. Very fun team to talk about, especially having covered all of these recruits coming up and now getting ready to dominate. Appreciate the Georgia fans. You guys have been absolutely awesome. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.